Hey guys, Jim here. Time to do another new acquisition video. I'm a couple of weeks late on this and I apologize, but things have just been piling up here. But I am very happy to finally get one of these under my lens here and finally have one in my collection. I'm speaking, of course, of a GTC knife called the G-Force II. For those who don't know, GTC is basically the initials for Gustavo Cecchini. Everybody just calls him Gus. Gus is an absolutely amazing, brilliant artist when it comes to the field of knife making. And he's completely self-taught. And he really specializes in very futuristic kind of looks. And that's one of the things that I totally dig about his work. What we're looking at here is the evolution of the original G-Force. Now, the original G-Force was a project that he had teamed up with a friend of his who's a law enforcement agent. And what they wanted to do was create something that law enforcement could use out in the field. So it wasn't really about being flashy and overdone and lots of crazy stuff. If you look through Gus's body of work, you'll see things that are truly amazing. You know, he'll build knives that'll be completely cut out in the handle and in the blade and have windows inserted and puts tritium inside and just does all kinds of really amazing things. His inlay work is among the best in the entire industry when he does, let's say a Damascus inlay or mother of pearl or something. He'll do it in ways that you don't typically see knife makers do it, and he'll make it completely flush, like you can't feel it and tell that it's there. He's just truly incredible. But with the G-Force, it was made to be a little bit more of a workhorse kind of knife, and we'll dissect that a little more in a couple of minutes here. Now, I have chosen to put a lanyard on this just because it was something that was a little more convenient for me. I've got my crisp black designs bead on there, and I would have normally taken off, but it was the very first lanyard that I've ever tied, and I tied it directly out of the knife, and I'm not going to untie it because I'm probably going to fuck it up and never be able to do it again. Yeah, you guys can laugh all you want. Tying a lanyard is not a particularly skilled thing, but for some reason, I can't friggin' do it. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about Gus before we get into this incredible knife. Gus actually is an agronomic engineer. Agronomy basically is the science and technology of producing and using plants for food, fuel, fiber, land reclamation. It basically covers plant genetics, plant physiology, meteorology, and soil science. And these are the kind of guys that try to find ways of producing more healthy foods that can, or any kind of agriculture or plant life that could be used for other applications, extracting energy from plants, things like that. So yeah, you got to be a pretty smart individual to be able to hold down that title. And he basically was living on his family's farm, huge farm in Brazil. And I guess they have very long, dry winters there, and there's not much that they can really be cultivating. Now, they do have cattle and things like that, but I'm sure that left him with plenty of free time. So one of his passions was knives, and he wanted to get into becoming more of a kind of a part-time or a hobbyist knife maker, and he just exploded. I mean, totally exploded. He started in 2004, and almost immediately the world took notice to what he was doing because his designs are so unique, and he's done some really incredible things. He's come up with different opening systems, different lock systems, just all kinds of crazy stuff, and you can't help but be mesmerized when you go through pictures and videos, seeing the work and the things that he's achieved. Now, this particular knife is fairly basic in comparison to the things that he typically does. Now, it's not to say it's a basic knife in any way. As you can see, there is a lot of technical proficiency in which he had to use to make this. But, going off of the work that he typically does, this is not, a huge monumental leap in knife making. Now, for me, I love it because I wanted to have something that would be an EDC, something I'm not afraid to carry and use when the occasion were to arise. And I've carried this a shitload since I've gotten it. So basically, one of the interesting things about Gus's work is his finish work. And we'll take a look here at this blade. He has a rather unique way of creating his matte finishes, and they really are stunning. And I think that also aids in the futuristic look as well. And he does great combo finishes. He'll do satin finishes in certain areas and mirror polishing and then his bead blasting. And is achieving his particular kind of blasting, his particular kind of matte finishes through using different types of media for the blasting. It could be glass beads, it could be ceramic, and he really changes it up and creates what I think is a wonderful, very sanitary, very clean look. It looks like something you'd see coming out of an operating room instead of, out of some random person's pocket. He's also utilizing his own proprietary bearing system, the GTC bearing system, legendary at this point. It's basically just stainless steel ball bearings instead of, when you look at IKBS bearings, they're steel, but they're not stainless steel. Is it, something that you really have to worry about too much? Probably not. But the fact that you've got stainless steel ball bearings just means that you can enjoy the knife, carry the knife on a daily basis. And, if it happens to get wet, things happen to happen, it's less of a worry about corrosion and rusting of those bearings. They're not terribly difficult to replace if that were to happen with IKBS, but it's a nice thing to see that Gus wanted to take something that was already working great and just make it a little bit better. All right, so basically overall here we have 5.5 inches closed. You have a 3 3/4 inch blade on here. It's 8 3/4 inches overall, and he's using S35 VN steel. Now that's typically what he's using on the G-Force II. I can't say for certain that's exactly what's on this one, but I'm just going based off of his history. So when we talk about Gus Cecchini, we're talking about somebody who's got obviously a brilliant mind. And to take something and scale it back where it seems a bit more simplistic, you gotta wonder why. Well, when you go back to the original G-Force, that particular knife was all stainless steel from what I recollect. And it was designed to be something that could be used in the field for law enforcement. He had jimping in certain key areas, and he basically shaped the handle so that it could be used as a glass breaker. Now, this was back in, I want to say 2009, if I'm not mistaken. And glass breakers, we've seen on plenty of knives from, $30 production knives all the way up to several $1,000 customs. And when you look at the shape of this, again, this being the evolution, the G-Force II, it's got what I think is a vastly different look from the original, but you can still see the shapes taking form here to create a glass breaker on either end. Now, not being made of steel, being made of titanium here, yes, it would perform that function, but I wouldn't think you'd be able to perform that function more than once. Titanium being a much softer compound than stainless steel, you're probably going to flatten it out in the area that you're using. So you're going to bust 2 windows with this basically. But what you've got here is something that is wonderfully ergonomic. It's a slimline knife, very, very easy to wield in the hand. Very comfortable in the hand. I love the way that he's built this. And one of the interesting things is the clip. What he's using is his proprietary flush mount clip. Now, he does a really cool tension hideaway clip that disappears into the frame on certain models like the Federal. I do have a video on the Federal from sometime last year that was a guest blade. But this is his flush mount clip. It really is just a simple titanium spring clip. But because of the topography of the landscape here of this frame, it allows you to create a completely flush fit here and still give you gaps and areas here that allow it to be fully functional. You don't really feel this clip on here at all except for where it duckbills right here to allow entry into the seam of your pocket. Very low profile, completely unobtrusive. You don't feel this when you're holding the knife in your hand. That's what's so wonderful about it. No hot spots, very gentle on the hands. But, and I've been carrying this for about 2 weeks, almost every day. At some point, I put this in the pocket. Very easy to slide in and out. It's got good tension. It does leave from here back hanging up out of your pocket, which I love. Gives me something to grab onto. I don't want a deep carry pocket clip. And then, of course, by having the lanyard on there, I've got something to make it a little bit easier to come out of the pocket. One of the things that I love about Gus's work is the contours and the lines that are brought into each of his knives. You see some wonderful contouring work here, even in the lock, and that's something that, you know, I think a lot of makers might be afraid to do, and he just goes balls to the wall with no fear. So there's great milling throughout here, giving you a design built into the lock bar itself like you would see on the presentation side. Notice that his lock bar cutout is unconventional as well. Beautiful detail work in there. And when I first saw the pictures of this, I was under the impression that these were inlays. I thought maybe it was a silver texalium or something like that. But actually, that is just a milled out pocket in the titanium, and then he's done a milled design into the titanium. Now, one of the neat things about it is, number one, of course, it does look different. It's a nice look, but there's a little bit of traction there, almost as if it were jimping. So when you're using the knife, if you're holding it in a particular position, if you're doing some very fine, delicate cutting and your hands were up here, you would have a little bit of extra traction. It's not as severe as jimping. It's not going to be a super secure hold, but it's got a little bit of tactility to it. Another thing that Gus is known for is custom hardware. Everything is done by him. There's never anything off the rack. So you see he's taken the pivot here and he's milled out lines in it to give you rather unique look. Then we get over here to the hardware that holds the knife together, and again, full custom. Same for the hardware holding the clip on. Everything beautifully custom made. Standoff's pretty standard fare there, nothing too crazy. This particular variation has no anodizing. The only custom embellishments that I've seen beyond this on anybody else's were anodized clips, like anodized blue. That's the only ones I've actually seen is anodized blue. So what you've got here is a no frills type of flipper with almost a bullnose tip. So you see we get this incredible swedge. I love his grinds. And what he's done is he's created a very thick tip here, so it's a little bit tougher for tasks such as prying and penetrating hard materials. So it really kind of gives this particular design a leg up for practicality. When you look at a lot of Gus's designs, they're made to be visually striking. They're made to be mechanically unique in some fashion. You look at his new Airborne. What you've got there, instead of having a big old flipper tab hanging out, you have a tiny little tab right here. I mean, you almost don't even see it. And you actually pull up on it. It's on a pivot. And when you pull up, then it releases the blade. It's wonderfully unique. He does such incredible stuff like that. So you look at this and go, well, that's pretty basic in terms of the creativity that he normally displays. But that's what I like about this. It's much more of an everyman's everyday type of knife from him, from somebody that can do literally anything, even things that you haven't thought of, he's thought of, and he's going to be implementing. It's incredible. But what you've got here is what I think a more usable form. So it's hard, you know, for somebody that comes in that's never experienced any of the GTC knives and have them agree that this is a practical everyday knife. But when you compare it to what he's typically making, it is a much more practical realization of Gus's creativity. Great action, as you would expect. Mine is not fully broken in, but it's already flipping much faster and much more smoothly than the day that I bought it. This was basically fresh off of his bench. He does deal with one particular gentleman named Ulf in Germany, whom I purchased it from. And Ulf is able to get things from Gus from time to time, and he offers the best deal that he can. Obviously, he's doing it to make money. I paid a lot more for this than I was really comfortable with, but I needed to have a GTC in my collection. I've been on Gus's books for well over, just under 2 years, I suppose. And I knew it was still going to be a while into 2015 before I finally got my plasma built from him. So when I saw this opportunity, I seized it. Yes, I paid more than I normally would have, but it was worth it for me to finally, after waiting, I've been waiting about 4 years since I first saw one of his knives, knowing that I'd want to have one of his knives. It's been about 4 years, so it was worth paying an extra few $100s to be able to get my hands on it. Although I did pay a lot less than I've seen the few of these that have been sold go for on the secondary market. I've seen these float around $2,500 to $2,700. I did pay less than that, thankfully, so I am happy for that deal. And just so happens that right now, currently, as I'm making this video, Gus is building my plasma. We just had the conversations back and forth on what to do here and what to do there, the inlays and things like that. And it is going to be an astounding knife. I cannot wait to get that. So I'm probably a couple weeks out from receiving it. So I'm pretty excited about that. And that's going to be the last I get directly from him for probably another few years. So yeah, it really is worth it. Some people wonder, is it worth spending this kind of money? Is it worth waiting 2, 3, 4, 5 years from certain makers? And I say yes, not generally, but yes, from specific makers. You know, if you're going to get a true custom from Todd Begg, it's worth the 5 or 6 year wait. If you're going to get a knife by Gus, it's worth waiting the 2 or 3 years. Abso-freaking-lutely. Because what you've got here is absolute perfection. A knife that nobody can pick apart and go, well, I would have done this differently, or I've seen other makers do this or that better. It really doesn't get better than this. I happen to like this particular shape. It's more of a modified Wharncliffe or modified sheep's foot. You've got quite a bit of belly here on the blade to make it useful for cutting tasks. It's got an aggressive profile. It's got this incredible swedge. And again, that thicker nose right up here that's going to make this a more stable and tough knife. Is this going to be a knife that you're going to hard use? Probably not, because of the value that's placed on them due to the scarcity of his knives out there. Somebody probably isn't going to spend $2,500 to $3,000 on this and start hacking into shit right away. That's just the way it is. But for something that you're going to carry on a daily basis and enjoy, of course, you're going to show it off and show your buddies and whomever you encounter that's interested in knives. And then, yeah, if the cutting task were to arise, you know it's going to do it. One of the neat things is he's very, no matter how advanced and how beautiful a knife is, he's very much about the basic reason for having a knife is it has to cut. And he told somebody that no knife leaves his shop without this test. He basically hovers the knife above his skin, and if it won't slice hair on its own that's standing up off of his arm, then he won't send it out. That's insane. That's crazy friggin' sharp, and this is insanely sharp. It has the look of a modern kind of fighter style. It fits the hand well, even though everything really is squared off. Everything has sharp right angles to it. Sharp angles to it. And you do feel this stuff. I'm not going to lie. You do feel these little points and these little edges, but they're not uncomfortable. While it may not be all rounded off like many knives that we're seeing lately, he's able to take this very angular, futuristic look and make it comfortable in the hand. Incredible action all the way around. Could not be happier with it. There's not a single thing about this knife that I would change. And it's something that, at least right now, I do plan on keeping in my collection. Okay, maybe when my plasma comes in, it's so friggin' amazing that I may never carry this. And you guys know when I don't carry something, I'll then sell it. But I like the fact that it is fairly practical. It's a great size. This is really my sweet spot. I really love that 3 3/4 inch blade. So it's something that I find to be the perfect fit for me as an individual. One thing you want to keep in mind whenever you're researching, trying to find any GTCs, there are a tremendous amount of Chinese fakes out there. And the unfortunate thing is you're going by a picture in many cases when you're purchasing online. It could even be a picture of a real GTC and you're going to end up getting a Chinese fake. So I'll tell you this, if you see a price that is too good to be true, pass. Especially on eBay or maybe a website that you're unfamiliar with. You're probably not going to have too much of an issue in the knife collecting community, buying from collectors, but there are fakes out there. There are fakes, and they will be inscribed with the GTC logo. It will say GTC. It will look pretty darn real, so just be careful where you're purchasing from. If you ever have any questions about the authenticity, you know, Gus is a very, very approachable guy. I would say send the picture over to him, email him and go, hey, just wanted to know, does this look right to you? And I'm very certain that he could very quickly identify and tell you for certain. He's a wonderful, like I said, wonderful and approachable guy. I had a chance to meet him in June at Blade 2014. He's a very intense guy. You can see that there's always something working in his mind, but he's very approachable, very friendly. And I got to tell you, if there was a way that I could do it, I would own 20 of his knives. I've often considered selling off most of everything I have and going to an almost all GTC collection. And who knows, that may be in my future. Anyway, I wanted to share that with you in this quick little, quick 20-minute overview. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you're able to experience for yourself the sleek, slick perfection that Gus brings into his knives. Certainly don't need me to tell you about that. He's, legendary in this industry. Everybody knows him for his perfection. So if you get a chance to own one, do not pass it up. I'll see you guys on the next video.